to Faithbook Friday, and this will be our final lesson on our Beatitudes, the characteristics that we should exhibit as children of God. Today we're going to be talking about next to the last verse, and that is verse 30 in Proverbs 31. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And I want us to remember that these are Proverbs relating to how we as men or women relate to God and how we relate to others. But our key point here is fearing the Lord. We should be focused on God. Now, this fear doesn't mean afraid of God. We should not be afraid of what He's going to do, but we should have an awe and a reverence for God because of what He does do, what He can do, and what He continues to do in our lives. Now, I wanted us to look at Proverbs 9, verse 10, because it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So, as we begin to reverence the Lord, as we begin to study Him, that's the beginning of wisdom, and knowing Him is understanding. It provides understanding for us. So, I want to look today at a person in the Bible who was so focused on God. He was able to have great knowledge, great understanding, and we find this person's story in the book of Daniel. So in Daniel, we found out right away in Daniel chapter 1 that in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. So Nebuchadnezzar has taken over Judah during the reign of Jehoiakim, and the king, Nebuchadnezzar, ordered that some of the Israelites from the royal families and the nobility be brought to him for service. And it tells us in verse 4 of chapter 1, these should be young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. Now, Ashpenaz, the king's chief, was supposed to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians, and the king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were going to enter the king's service. Well, it tells us that from some of those who were chosen from Judah, Daniel and 3 of his friends were chosen. Now, we know them best as Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. But it's interesting to me that we know them that way because their names from Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And the chief official gave them new names. Daniel's new name was Belshazzar. And then Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We always refer to those 3 by their Babylonian name, yet we still refer to Daniel as his Israelite name. Not sure why that is, but that's the way I've always grown up knowing it. Anyway, we find out in Daniel chapter 1 that Daniel asked the guard if they can have other food. In verse 8, it says, Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now, God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. Does that remind you of anybody? I was thinking about the story of Esther when I was reading this. God caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. So we see right away that Daniel was focused on God and what God wanted for them. Daniel did not choose to eat the food that the king provided for them because he knew that was not what God wanted for them. And it says, to these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. And at the end of this time, when they brought the men before the king, they found that none were equal to Daniel and his friends. In every matter of understanding and wisdom, the king found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom. And we learn that that's the case from Proverbs 9:10. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge and understanding, and God gave that to them. Now, going on in chapter 2, starting in verse 17, well, it starts actually before then. We have a problem that the king has had a dream. Seems kind of familiar, huh? Nebuchadnezzar has had a dream, and they want somebody to interpret that dream. Well, the king's astrologers can't do it, so the king is furious, and he's ordered the execution of all the wise men in Babylon. But Daniel explains the matter to his friends, and they plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that they might not be executed with the rest of the men. And during the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. So he was focused on God. In the middle of understanding that he was about to be killed, he goes back to his friends, and they plead for mercy from God. So they are focused completely on God. And then God gives him the answer to the king's vision. But then Daniel praised the God of heaven. He doesn't immediately run to the king to tell him what's going on. He stops to praise God for what he has given him. Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. I love that. He knows that his wisdom comes from God alone, not from anything that he has done. And he carries on in verse 23. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we ask of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king. So Daniel is able to go back to Nebuchadnezzar and tell him what his dream means. And in verse 27, still in chapter 2, Daniel replied to the king, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. And then Daniel goes on to explain what's going to happen to the king. So Daniel is still solely focused on God. He doesn't take credit for knowing what's going to happen. He doesn't tell the king or allow the king even to think that it is of his own power. He immediately points the king to God. I think this is great. In verse 46, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery. So, because Daniel was focused on God, he continually pointed King Nebuchadnezzar back to God and his power. The king recognizes that Daniel's God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and the revealer of mysteries. Now let's carry on in chapter 3. And we're looking at verses 16 through 18. And here we have a problem because the king is going to throw the people into the blazing furnace who do not fall down and worship the image that Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And surprise, surprise, Daniel and his friends will not fall down and worship that image. So they are brought before the king. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, that is to the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. So Nebuchadnezzar was furious with them. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter. Daniel's friends were thrown into the furnace, but the king looks in and there were 4 men in the furnace. He saw 4 men walking around unbound and unharmed. I guess as a child, I always assumed Daniel was also thrown in the fiery furnace. That was not the case. It was just Daniel's three friends plus Jesus in the furnace. So they came out of the furnace alive and well because of God. And in verse 28 of chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar even says, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants." He goes on to say, "They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego may be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way." And they were promoted. Now that's where I'm going to stop on this, because I think that we can see that Daniel and his friends were focused on God. And the beautiful thing about that, the great lesson for us, is when our lives are totally focused on God, other people are going to notice that. Nebuchadnezzar the king noticed that. And he even said, nobody's going to speak evil against their God, because no other God can save in this way. I want you to understand that no matter what is happening in your life, if you remain focused on God, even if you don't get the outcome that you want in what you're praying for or what you think you're striving for, if you will continue to be focused on God, other people will see that he is a God of power, a God of mercy, a God of planning, a God of the future. He is the one true God, and people will see that when you are continually focused on him. I love the story of Daniel and his singular focus on God. What an encouragement to me. There are things that I have been praying for, and as of the day that I'm recording this video, I don't have an answer yet. I don't know if it's a maybe. I don't know if it's a no. I don't know. Could be a yes. I don't know. But the God that we serve is a great God. He is a powerful God. He is able to do anything. Does he always choose to do the things we ask him to? No. But he does that for our good, often when we don't even know it. Now, I decided to pull the verse from Daniel 3:17. And this is when Daniel's friends are talking, and they say, "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand." I love that. The God we serve is able to deliver, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. Even if they were not delivered in this life, they would have been delivered eternally. But I think verse 18 is even more important for me, and it's not on this. "Even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up." So I had to print this one as well, even if he doesn't. Because sometimes I have to remind myself that even if God doesn't do what I'm asking him to do, even if he doesn't decide to answer my prayers the way I want him to, even if he doesn't, he is still God, and I will still serve him, because he is God and he loves me. I guess one of our greatest reminders is that we need to remain focused on God in the midst of life, in the midst of the craziness and the busyness and the struggle and the hatred and things that are going on in our world. We should remain focused on God, because when we remain that way, other people take notice. Now, we've been in Proverbs. We've gone all the way through all of these verses in Proverbs 31. And we've learned a lot about how to be people of God. So I really pray for you, for me, that in the next months, we'll be trying out these be attitudes, that we will be closer to God. And as a result of that, our focus will continually be on God, and other people will be able to see that. So stay with me. In the month of July, we will be learning some more things about God and his word, and the fact that every page tells his story.